Hilchis Zchiah U'Matanah Perek Chi. Now we learned in Perek Hey, that when a person gives a matana, so the matana has to be an eifin of a matana gluya. Ram says, Sorach Shetia Gluya Umufursemes. If a person says, Kisu Baseiserut Nulei, so the matana is not a matana. And the reason for it is because we're afraid that maybe a person is going to give away a matana, and the purpose of the matana, it'll really, or eventually, he'll be hurting the lekuchas. In other words, a person giving a matana, nobody knows he gave a matana. Someone is going to go ahead and buy this field and pay for it, and then the mekabel matana is going to go to the lekech and say, "Listen, you bought a field, but this field is really mine because I have a star matana beforehand." So therefore, Chazal instituted that if you write a matana, it has to be a matana gluya mufarsemes. Even more, that if it doesn't say clearly, it's not only if it was clearly not a matana, he told him l'moshel kisu baseiserut nulei, but even if he didn't write clearly that shvu b'shvakim u'bercheves and give it to him, in other words that it should be ba'ifin meforsam, so we're choishes that maybe it was a matana musteres, and therefore the matana is not chal. So in order for a matana to be chal, Zchiah U'Matanah bari and Zchiah U'Matanah shchiv mira, it has to be dafke, it was a matana gluya umufarsemes. That's what we learned at the beginning of Perek Hey. Now, Benegei, we mentioned this. Benegei shchiv mira, l'chura, the shaila is a shchiv mira. What's the chashash? The chashash is that he'll give away a matana, and then later on he's going to sell it, and the mekabel matana he'll be able to take it away from the buyer. But l'chura by a shchiv mira, where the mekabel matana is only koina b'shas misa, so if lepel the shchiv mira gave away a matana shchiv mira, and then he sold it, it taka belongs to the lekech, and the recipient won't be able to take it away from the lekech, because the lekech will time to the recipient. You were mekabel the matana la'achar misa, and lepel I was already koina michayim, so memel it's not yours, even though your star is earlier. So therefore, what's the chashash over there? The chashash is not that the shchiv mira himself will go ahead and sell it after he gave the matana. Over here, the chashash is that the yorshim of the shchiv mira, the shchiv mira gave away a matana shchiv mira, and lepel nobody knows about it. Now the yorshim of this shchiv mira are going to go ahead and they're going to sell this karka to somebody, and then the mekabel of the matana is going to tie it to the buyer. Listen, we were kind of this matana as soon as the person died, and now when you were hand ahead and we're kind of from the lekuches, which was obviously after, from the yorshim after he died. So Mela, our matana comes before. So Mela, because of that, there's a chashash that's why the shchiv mira also has to have a matana gluim ufarsemes. No, the chashash is not that the shchiv mira himself is going to sell it, because if he sells it, you're not going to be mafsed the lekeach. The chashash is that maybe the yorshim will sell it, and if the yorshim will sell it, so then the lekuches will lose out. Now, b'medvar mamurim, if it's not mufursemes even after he died. Masha'inkin, if he says clearly that I want you to be mefarsim about this matana after I die. Right now, I don't want it to be mufursim. But after I die, the shchiv mira is saying I want it to be mufursim. So b'chia gavne, there's no chashash, because when the chales of the matana is chal, the shchiv mira is chal misa. So mele at that point in time it'll be mufursemes. Mele there's no chashash that he'll be able to sell it, because the lekuches will know that it was bought. That's this first halacha. Perek Chi. Shchiv mira shetziva v'amar lei tegalu matana zu avlei tediu ba'adam elo la'achar misa. After his misa, you could be megala. So the din is arezu matana kayamas. This is called a proper matana. Ve'ena matana musteres. This doesn't have a din of a matana musteres. Why? Shebe'eshe hikna, when the chales kinyan was chal, shahu achar mesi ari omer galuesa. Memela at that point in time, when the kinyan was chal, so it was galuesa. So the yorshim aren't going to be able to sell it, because everyone's going to know that it's a karka which was given away as a matana. Halacha base. Mitzava machmas misa. There's a din of a special din of a mitzava machmas misa, which we learned earlier. Legabe the din that the chlala matana b'mikzas doesn't have a din of a matna shchiv mira. Stam matana b'mikzas doesn't have a din of a matna shchiv mira, unless he says clearly that he's giving it out matna shchiv mira. But minastam, we don't assume that it's a matna shchiv mira. Masha'inkin, if he's a matzava machmas misa, which means we see it's clear that he thinks that he's about to die, so then even a matana b'mikzas has a din of a matna shchiv mira. That's what we learned before about a matzava machmas misa. Now we're learning another din. A matzava machmas misa doesn't have to say clearly to be mefarsim the matana, because since he feels that he's about to die, so therefore there's no chash, and we assume that the reason why he didn't say anything is only because he was very anxious because of the matzav. He doesn't have to say clearly galu matana. If he says clearly late to galu, nor is even lachar misa, so then it does have a din of a matana musteris. Masha'inkin, he doesn't have to say galu matana. Laval pishu ksuvestam is ein choshen lo shem musteris. He would only choshish that it was done with all kinds of cheshbenis. We assume that the reason why he wasn't mentioned is because he was a Matzava Machmas Misa, and that moment he had a lot of other things on his mind. Halachi Gimel. Shchiv mira shetziva v'omar yitnul pleini kol nechasi. That was the lashon. That this person should take all my nechasim. Before we were talking about you should give him the nechasim. Over here it's the lashon yitul pleini kol nechasai, a mixas nechasai, a yagzik, a yiske, a yikna is kulon lashon matana. It's all lashon that he's giving away a matana to them. V'cheinem amar yachsein a yirash al misharoi liyarshay is harei zekon. Like we learn behemsha that someone that's roy liyarshay, so he receives the matna shchiv mira b'teiras Yerusha. And someone that's not roy liyarshay, he's mekabel the matna shchiv mira b'teiras matana. So if a person uses these lishenis of yitel, of yachzik, a yiske, so that's a lashon of matana. If a person uses the lashon of yirash, yachsein, which also Yerusha, in Lashon Arami, so that has a din of Yerusha, and that works for someone that's royally Yorshay. Now, Amar Yehana Pleini Behem, he didn't say Yachzik, he didn't say Yiddish, he just said Yehana Pleini Behem, or Yamid Behem, or Yeshoin Behem is Leikona. That's not called a Matna Shchiv Mira. He's not giving it away. He's saying he should have a no from it. That's not called a Matna Shchiv Mira. Halacha Hey. Shchiv Mira Shekosav Kol Nechosav Lacher. He wrote away all his Nechosav. Is him Eina Royal Yorshay. He wrote it as a matana. The lashon was matana. Kosav kol nechosav lacher. Im Eina Royal Yorshay. If this person is not Royal Yerusha, is netel mishum matana. Because he used the lashon yitel, yachzik, yisker, or whatever lashon he used, but it wasn't a lashon of Yerusha. V'im Royal Yorshay, and if he's Royal Yorshay, so even though he wrote a lashon of matana, is netel mishum Yerusha. That's the chiddush. In other words, if he writes a lashon Yerusha to someone that's Eina Royal Yorshay, so that person is not kena b'chlal. Masha'inkin, if he writes a lashon matana, a Yerusha to someone that's royal Yarshay, so then he noitli mishum Yerusha, and al derech zeh, if he writes a lashon matana to someone that's royal Yerusha, is also noitli mishum Yerusha. B'med dvarim amurim b'shehoya ha'yerush hazeh achas mibneisov, o echad miklal bnei bonov, echad miklal echov, u'kiyetzba mishar Yarshim. In other words, there was a number of Yarshim, not his sons. We're talking about Yarshim, which aren't his sons, either his daughters, his Einaklach, his brothers, or whatever, but there was a number of Yarshim, and he wrote the Yerusha to one of them. So then that person is the Yerush. Avalim Kasvul, Echad Mibonov. But Masha'inkin, if a Shchiv Mira writes a lashon of Yerusha or Matana to Echad Mibonov, is Leyaso Ela Petrupis K'misha B'yana. That's what we learned before, that when a person, a case of Kol Nechasav Lebonov, so we assume that Leyaso Ela Petrupis, and he doesn't really mean to take away the Yerusha from the other Bonim and give it to this Bonim. Halacha Vav. Misha Amruli B'shas Misasin, Nechasecha L'miyein, Shema L'pleini, V'amr Lem Ela L'mi. So it wasn't a lashon, he certainly didn't say a lashon of Yerusha, but the pashtus is more of a lashon l'matan. It was like a very part of a lashon. In other words, who else? He says, maybe the plain says, who else? Is Royan. Im Royal Yarshay. If that person is a Yerush, in Royal Yarshay, he's amongst the Yarshim, but he's the one that's royal, and he's one of the ones that's Royal Yarshay. And now he's saying, giving it all of it to him is Neitla Mishum Yerusha. And then Lav Neitla Mishum Matana. Now we're going to learn Behemshech what's the difference between Neitla Mishum Yerusha and Neitla Mishum Matana. Either way, he gets it. But there's a din, L'moshe, when a person gives something away as a matana, and then he says, Va'achrav l'pleini, so the din is that he gives it away, and l'pel, when that person dies, it goes to the achrav l'pleini. Masha'inkin, if someone receives it as a Yerusha, so Yerusha ain't lehefsik, so if a person receives something as a Yerusha, there's no musig of Va'achrav l'pleini. It's like a masna mashikos batera, because he was the Yerush, and therefore the Va'achrav l'pleini we don't count, we don't rechen zich with. That's the chilik if you receive it mishum Yerusha or you receive it mishum matan. Halacha zayin. Ger sheyeshli ben she'ein hirase bigdusha. So a person, a ger, had a child. As his child was, and she became uberes from him while he was a goy, And then now he's a ger, and she became a geris. And Mamela, the child is a yid, and he's a yid. But Lepel, doesn't have a din of his child because it wasn't hirase bigdusha. It was hirase shlei bigdusha. It's nochamal. Ger sheyeshli ben she'ein hirase bigdusha is hail ve'ein yorshe k'mishi is bor b'mkeme is kach ein yochel liten lei kol nechosav b'matna shchivmira. Now a shchivmira can give something away betur matana, and it can give something away betur yerusha. Now, this child, which be'emes, biologically it's his child, but on the other hand, al pi halach, it's not his child. So Mele, he really can't be Yerush. He can't be Yerush because he's not a Yerush. On the other hand, if you're going to give him, you could give him a matana you're allowed to give him. But the problem is, if you're going to give him a matana, and the din is doch that a Yerush, even by a matana, is doch mekabel mishum Yerusha, so it looks like he's being Yerush. So Chazal instituted that this whole din of Shchiv is the Chadin d'Rabbanon, and Memela, this din d'Rabbanon, that a Shchiv Mirah by a Yerush is misad Yerusha, and by Makabel Matana is als Matana, so this din doesn't apply to a ger. By a ger, there's no din. This whole din of Matna Shchiv Mirah doesn't apply legabe his child, which was a Hirase Shlei B'Kedusha. Ain't it? Nochamal ger sheyeshli ben she'ein hirase b'kedusha hail ve'ein yorshe k'meishi is bor b'mkeme is kach ein yochel liten lei kol nechosav b'matna shchiv mirah. You can't give him his nechosav matna shchiv mirah. Lei kol nechosav lei kol miktosav. You can't give him anything else matna shchiv mirah. Why? Shaloshin Yerusha Matana legabi Yerush echadein. When you're dealing with a Yerush, even if you use a loshin matana, it has a din of Yerusha. If imtema yikna, so it comes out nimtza zeh Yerush izov. It looks like he's being Yerush izov. In reality, he said yikna, so l'chura is giving it as a matana. And since he's giving it as a matana, so l'chura, so it's not a Yerusha, so it's not a problem. So you say no. Since by a Yerush, a lashon matana is also Yerusha, and he looks like a Yerush, so Memela, when he's going to receive it, it's going to look like he's getting it as Yerusha, and the Beferish doesn't have Yerusha, so therefore he instituted that he shouldn't be able to get it anyway. Yerusha avadenisht, and even Matana, because the Matana looks like Yerusha. Halacha ches. Lefichach, so that din is only legabi his own child. Legabi his child, which is Hirase, Shalei B'Kedusha, he can't give it away as a matana. Lefichach, Chemnosen Leger Mishara Ger, if he gives it just to another ger, so then matanose kayam is then the matana is kayam. Halacha tes. Now, till now we're talking about a matna shchivmira giving something away. Over here we're saying that there's a musik called hidah shchivmira. Now, there's a chiddush, normally when a person is moida, so there's a taina mishata nibach, that a person was like saying something he didn't mean it. Unless he says atameidai, so there's always a taina mishata nibach. Unless the person's being teveim, these the dinim that teim v'nitten. But I'll call upon him. Over here the chiddush is shchiv mira shehida sheyesh lo lepleni etzli kach v'kach, and he added the words to nuhulei oisha amar keli pleni pikodin hu biyadi lepleni to nuhulei. He's saying that there's a certain article of in his house, and this is really a pikodin, and you should give it away to that person. Or chotzer plenis shel pleni, he says about a chotzer that it's really not mine, it's someone else's. Or choiv sheyesh lo biyad pleni ein shali shel plenihu. So no, someone owes me money, but he doesn't really owe me the money because it wasn't really my money that I lent him. It was someone else's money, and therefore that money that he owes me, you should give it to him. Is b'chol elo hadvarim u'kiyetzibem hiduyas yidah. So we say his idah is idah, and the chiddush is that even though he didn't say atem edai, so nevertheless we assume that a person is not mishate b'shas misa. Now the reason why he has to say tnuhulei in the case of hoidolei, because there's a chash, the einochinami is not mishate, but ein adam osul, as a person maybe doesn't want people to think that his children are rich or that he's rich, and therefore he's saying that this person, I owe this person money. Kilu say that we have choivis, and memela we're not rich. But Masha'in, if he says Tunulei, so then we say that he's not interested in Shalei Lasbia's Bonav. That's a separate thing which we'll all learn B'Hamshach. But I'll call upon him. The chiddush over here is first of all that there's no chash of mishatani bach by a shchiv mira. So when a shchiv mira is moida, so memela that's considered a hidah only if he said Tunulei. That's by betaltel, by mammon or by pikod, by karka, there's no din of tunulei. Now that is if there's a chayv, since it's already not biyadi anyways, so also there's no din of tunulei. That's chiddush number one. Then the Rambam says vafilo hoida hager lebnei she'ein hirasa b'kedusha, is dvar of kayomim. Even though we learned in Halacha Zayin that when a person wants to give a matan shchiv mirah to his ben, which is ein hirasa b'kedusha, he can't, because lepel, since it's by a Yerush, it's always a lashon of Yerusha, it's always a year of Yerusha, and over here there's no Yerusha. So therefore they instituted that there's no din of matan shchiv mirah from a ger to his son, which is a hirasa shlei b'kedusha, but over here it's not a matan shchiv mirah, over here it's a hidah shchiv mirah. Hidah shchiv mirah is not a problem. Va'afilo hoida ager lebnei she'en hirasa b'kedusha is also dvar of kayamin. Va'afilo hoida shchiv mirah legoy is nice loy. If it's a hidah shchiv mirah, so that could be also even to a goy. That's talking about when it's a hidah. Avol halacha yud shchiv mirah shetziva litn legoy matana. If he instructed to give a goy matana, ain't shem lei. Why? Shezeh k'mi shetziva laver avera menuchasav. You're not allowed to give a goy matana stama matan schinam. Memela by a shchiv mirah telling, instructing to give a goy matana menuchasav. So that's considered a tziva for an avera. Masha'enkin, if he's being moided that this thing belongs to a goy, so there's no avera. Memela we accept his hidah. Halacha Yudalef. Amar Pleini Avdi Asu Eise Ben Chedin. That was the instructions. Make my Eved Ben Chedin. Sha'amar Asisi Eise Ben Chedin. Hareu Ben Chedin. So the din is Koifenes Hayorshin Umishachron Leise. She'eved Yeshni B'miktzas Mitzvahs. In other words, B'pashas B'hamshach. The Ram just said that a Shchiv Mirah, which was mitzvah to give something to a goy, so you don't listen to him because mitzvah avera. The fact that he's saying to be Mishachar the Eved, since the Eved is Yeshnim b'miktzas mitzvahs, so therefore you're supposed to listen to him and give the Eved to himself. Halacha Yud Beis. Omar ploinis shivchosi asu lo keiras ruach. That was his lashon. So the din is oisen lo keiras ruach. And what do? Ve'ena ivedes el aveda shehi reitzaba. Mikol ha'avedes hayuduyis lavodim beisam mokim. In other words, there's certain avedas that a shivcha has to do. If vice, she still has to work, because lapel she's a shivcha. But asu keiras ruach means she should choose the type of aveda that she wants to do, and there's different types of avedas. So generally, your odin could tell the shivcha what aveda he wants her to do, even if she doesn't like that aveda. So asura keiras ruach means that she should choose the avedas that she wants to do. In other words, she can't not do aveda, but she could choose what type of aveda she wants to do. Halacha Yud Gimel. Shchiv mirah shekosev kol nechosev le'echad. And v'amar Allah eini reitzibem is le'kanada, which is l'chura pashat. There's the fact that the Shchiv mirah wants to give something to someone and he instructed to give it to him, but that person obviously has the choice to say, I don't want to take it. Now the chiddush over there, this ika agdom of halacha Yudalet. Shasak v'achar kach tzavach. Nor is Shchiv mirah instructed to give the nechosim. And then he was shasak. And v'achar kach tzavach, shasak means he was shasak after the Shchiv mirah died, so at that point in time was the Kenyan, and then he was tzavach, and now he's dying, he doesn't want to be Kena. Is Kanish, the Shchiv mirah kiksuv and kumsurim hein, the Kivin sheshasak. Once he was shasak, Eini yochel he can't have charot. And now there's a dion whether the shasak was really as soon as the Shchiv mirah said it, or the shasak was after he died. The Pashas Advarim and the Ram, I think they learn that it's after he died. All those others learn that it goes back to Mafreya b'shas de Amira. Halacha Tezvav. Shchiv mirah shekosev lezeh. First he wrote one person, the matan shchiv mirah, and then the kosev la'acher, and then he wrote to another person. So the din is achrin kana. Why? Sheyesh le'lavzer ad sheyamas bein bakel bein b'miktzas. He's able to be chayzer from matan shchiv mirah, whether it was a matan shchiv mirah bakel or was a matan shchiv mirah b'miktzas. Now, if a person gives a matan shchiv mirah and then he's chayzer b'miktzas, so we're going to learn b'hamshah that he's chayzer from the whole thing. So it doesn't mean like this over here. You'd be able to read it. Ben bakel ben b'miktzas. He could be chayzer on mixas of the matan shchiv mirah that he gave, but that's not the din, because we're going to learn b'hamshah that a shchiv mirah and halacha yud zayin, a shchiv mirah shechayzer b'miktzas, so he's chayzer on the whole thing. So over here it means sheyesh l'lachzer at sheyomus ben bakel, whether it was a shchiv mirah, a matnas koil, or b'miktzas, like we learned before, that you can have a matnas shchiv mirah which is b'miktzas. Bein la'atzmi, whether he's chayzer, he says he wants to have this back what he gave, and bein la'acher, he wants to give it to someone else. Va'afilu kosav v'zikol rishin, even if he wrote the shtar and he was mezaka with the shtar to the rishin, or v'kosav and then v'kosav v'zikol achrin, so it's also ha'achrin kana. Why? She'schiv mirah she'zika adayin matan shchiv mirahu. So there was a shchiv mirah writes a shtar, and it's written as a matna shchimira, so then even lepel, if this star reached the hands of the recipient, it reached the hand of the recipient, or someone was koina for the recipient with the star, but lepel still has the din of a matna shchimira. Matna shchimira is only kaina lachar misa, and since it's only kaina lachar misa, so until the misa, the shchimira can still be chezer. That's talking about if there was just a zika. Aval shchimira shekosav, he wrote a star, and then the zika, he was mezaka the star to the recipient, and also v'kana miyodei, and there was a ma'aser kinyan on this matana as well. So then ein lacher kinyan klum. So then this kinyan is already. We don't look at this kinyan that it knows there was saya zika and saya kinyan. So even though normally when there's a matna shchiv mira and there was a kinyan, and this kinyan was noisev on the matna shchiv mira, a kinyan, so we consider it still a matna shchiv mira. Al derazeh, when there was a matna shchiv mira and there was a zika, so we also consider only a matna shchiv mira. But if there was saya zika and saya kinyan, so then ein la'achar kinyan klum ve'ein la'achzer bei. So then he can't have charata le'la'achar ve'le'la'atzmi. Ben shnos nakel, ben shnos mixas. Whether it was a matna shchiv mira bakel or it was a matna shchiv mixas, once there was saya zika and saya kinyan, so then he can't have charata. Now shchiv mira halacha yud zayin shchiv mira shechazer b'mixas. So shchiv mira wrote a matna shchiv. There was a matna shchiv mira, and he gave whatever he gave, and then part of what he gave, he was chayzer. Shchiv mira shechazer b'mixas. So the din is chazer bakel ketzad nosan kol mechasav l'rishin and v'konim miyodei kedei liapis es keche. So there was a kinyan kedei liapis es keche, and v'chazer v'nosan mikzosan la'acher. Now they gave a mixas la'acher v'konim miyodei kedei liapis es keche. So the sheni is kana, so the sheni is kena. Because lepeil halacha chavdalad mishames v'nimtzas matana kshura yerechi. We're talking about that it's a star which is a matana shchiv mira. In other words, it says clearly that this person was a shchiv mira and he was mitzaveh to give a matana. And lepel, this matana is lying al yerechi. It's tied to his thigh. Is afal pishu be'edim, even though there's edim signed on the star, and v'konim miyodi liapis kech, and it says in the star that there was a ma'aser kinyan kedei liapis kech noisef on the star matana shchiv mira. Nevertheless, Azeri was ein klum. Shaniyem kosva v'nimlach. Einach nam, he wrote this star, and he had intention of having a star a matna shchiv mira. That was his intention, and he even made a ma'aser kinyan neisev al zeh in this matna shchiv mira. But since lepel he never gave it, so therefore there's a concern, there's a possibility that he had charata from the matna shchiv mira, and a person that does a matna shchiv mira, so he could have charata. So memela hashani yemer kosva v'nimlach. He never really wanted to. At the end, he never wanted to give it. Now that's talking about if it's lying al yereche. V'im zika bola'acher. If lepel this star, he was mezaka the star for someone else, or someone made a ma'aser kinyan of the star for one of the recipients in the star, bein min hayarshim, bein she'enim min hayarshim, whether this acher is from the yarshim or not from the yarshim, is so the din is kol advarim shebo kayom kechol matna shchiv mira. So even if Moshel in this matna shchiv mira, it says for a number of people, and he was only mezaka this star for one of those people, that's the chiddush. That kol advarim shebo kayom, you know, even if he was mezaka the star for one of the people, one of the recipients in this matna shchiv mira, nevertheless that causes that all of the people that receive in this star also receive. Halacha chava v'chein misha kosev shtar chev alatzmi b'shem macher. He wrote a shtar chev saying that he owes someone money. A b'shem echad mibonav miyorshim, he owes one of his children money or the yorshim money. And lepel v'nosan ashtar yad shol. She gave the star to a third party. V'amr le'yeh ze'etzlecha. You should hold this. V'lipirish liklum. Esha amr le'hanach at she'emu lecha matas. Hold it until I'll tell you what to do. Umes, and he dies, is a reze in a klum. So you can't do anything with the star. Now, even though the Rambam really holds that when you write a star, there must be a chiyuv. The case in star, l'leiv afal pishein mal ve'imei, but only when there was a ischayvus. In other words, the leiv had to make a ma'aser kinyan of a ischayvus. Without a ischayvus, you can't write a star. So memela, the fact that he wrote a star that he owes money means that he taka owed money. But nevertheless, there's always a concern that maybe he already paid the money. Lepel, since the person that he owes the money to officially, there's this acher or this yerish or this ben is someone that doesn't have the star, so there's always a concern that maybe he paid the star, and that's why this v'chein fits in very well with Chavdalet. Allah Chavdalet also over there, there's a star, and that star l'chura means that something happened. It's not a question whether something happened or not. But Shani Eimer, the Rambam finishes off in Allah Chavdalet, Kosva v'nimlach. Then maybe he was nimlach. In other words, he undid what happened. So Aldera is over here, the v'chein. Someone wrote a star chev, so definitely he owed the money. But on the other hand, since the star doesn't find itself by the hand of the person that he owes the money to, so Memele is always a chash. Maybe he paid the money, maybe it was, I'll call upon him, since he doesn't have the star, so therefore he's not entitled to receive the money that's written in the star.